Hi everyone, Fox from Fox and Kit Woodworks and Fox Den Videos. You ever working on a project that's really big? Maybe it's a dining room table or a desk, and either you're working on a live edge slab, or maybe you decided to buy a bunch of big wood, join it together, now you need to flatten it? Well, back in the day, we'd have to make ourselves our own router sled to do this. However, Crafted Elements have come up with multiple different products, ranging from small to really big, to help you along that process and to save you some time. So, let's go ahead and jump into our review of the Crafted Elements Router Sled. Alright everyone, and we're back. A little bit different lighting out here. A couple hours passed for me to be able to continue this video. However, we're going to drive on. So, you might be thinking to yourself, why do I need a router sled? Well, when you're working on those projects like I was talking about, something this size, you're going to need something big enough to flatten it so that it'll fit. Well, most shops have a joiner or a planer, and a lot of those don't have enough width to be able to run something this big through it. Typically, the joiners that you see in most shops are 6 inches, 8 inches, maybe if you're lucky like I am, a 10 or a 12 inch, and with planers, 12.5 to 13 inches. So when you're doing bigger projects like this, you're going to need something to flatten it, and that's where a router sled comes in. And the reason why I ended up going with the Crafted Elements versus building my own really comes down to time and even the cost. I started going online looking for different products where I could build my own router sled to the size I needed for this project. The issue that came up is that by the time I had purchased all the rails, the crossbars, the ball bearing rollers, the acrylic for the plates, I was really only like $100, $150 cheaper than the Crafted Elements one when it wasn't on sale. And then looking at trying to make it out of wood, it's a cheaper option, but even wood these days costs quite a bit, and it's wood. It's gonna move, it's gonna warp, it's gonna kind of get funky on you, and then it's not gonna be doing the flattening job that you need it to do. Now, there are two parts to this system. You have your router sled and a flattening table. It is very important before you get to your router sled that you have a flattening table. And what a flattening table is any table that you have, whether it's a sheet of plywood and some sawhorses, an old dining room table like this, and you want to make sure it's as flat as possible. Level doesn't really matter as much because once the router sled's mounted to it, it's going to keep that same plane and keep everything flat. That being said, let's go into some of the features that the Crafted Elements comes with. One, you get these extruded rails, which surprisingly to me weren't as straight as I thought they were going to be. I actually messaged Crafted Elements and said, hey, look, I put two of these rails, flat against each other, and I've got like 1/8 of an inch gap at one end, almost 1/4 inch. Is there a reason for that? Are they bad rails? And what they told me is due to different heating and cooling temperature changes, that this metal will expand and contract, but once you lock it down on your flat surface, it's not a problem, which so far has been the case for me. Second, you have the nice acrylic pieces for making your attachments with your rails, your sled, your router, your dust collection. The ball bearings or the bearing rollers actually have dust covers on them so that dust doesn't get in to these fine little bearings in here. You can remove these to make it move even easier, but I'm leaving them on because it's going to create a lot of dust. Each one of these, you can independently adjust the bearings on. It's a little bit difficult once this is on because the adjuster is actually on the bottom side of it, but there's also an additional side adjuster. So one of the big things is, before you put this whole thing together and lock it down, put these on one of the rails and start testing to see how it slides. Back to the router sled. So I will tell you outright, if this is what you need, what you want, Crafted Elements always has some type of sale going on there, but do some searching. Little hint, tidbit advice, use that chat GPT. I know AI, I try to use when I can, but not rely on it. Put in there looking for any types of deals for whatever you're looking for. It will bring you the codes that work and put it in there. I ended up getting an additional 20% off on a 10% sale on this and got it way below what it normally goes for. And it really saved me a lot of money. Overall, this thing was right around $429. Right now, they have a sale going on where you can get it for $459, so I still saved $30 on it. And I actually picked up the 144 long base one because my thought was I was going to be doing this table or this piece of wood as one big slab instead of cutting it down into the legs and the tabletop. However, it does allow me to have the ability to do bigger slabs down the road, but also to have two bases of different heights. If you can see here, I put a piece of plywood under it, and that's from the Crafted Elements recommendations. So I actually have two sets of these rails, one set on 1 3/4 inch plywood, the other's on 2 sets of 3/4 inch plywood. That'll allow me to take different thicknesses of boards to flatten out. Going into the actual building and construction of this whole thing, pretty simple, takes a little bit of fine work and adjustments just to make sure everything is right. I really highly suggest you go to YouTube and you look up the Crafted Elements setup guide for this. It really does help you out, figure out which way the base plate goes, the rails go, the runners, everything on there. The build quality on it was great. I can tell that most of this stuff is laser cut since I do have a laser engraver and cutter. It's very accurate, but I did have 2 issues arise on the actual base plate. 2 of the holes weren't all the way cut out, so there was a piece of plastic in the center, and since I had bought this like 3-4 months ago and just was putting it together, I wasn't going to bug them about it. Luckily, they were just barely held on, and with a little punch, I was able to knock them out and get the bolt in. I also was missing the 4 longer screws that you use for the setup on this. I don't know if I accidentally threw them away. I was pretty sure I checked all the packaging. I don't know if it just didn't come with them. But luckily over here, I got my wall of screws and bolts. Or as we used to say, nuts and bolts, we got screwed back in football. And was able to find threads that fit it just fine. When you put it together, basically what you're going to be doing is setting it up so that the Crafted Elements logos are all facing up. So that means all of the bolts are going to be going down through it, except for the router, they're going to be coming up. Once I followed that video and got that all set up and got this built, I then worked on the rails. Now, when you buy it, it's going to give you dimensions. It might say 40 inches by 144 inches or 48 inches by 144 inches. That's the actual dimensions of the parts. When you actually go to use it, you're going to lose some distance because as you can see, when it comes and touches this side, let me get that cord out of the way so it can touch fully, you're losing about 5 inches of space from the rail to the cutter head on each side. So if you are using the 40-inch one, your cutting space is, I think they say on the actual website, around 35-ish. And for the length, it's the same thing. Because this router is set here, you're going to be able to move it down to the end, but you're going to have to stop about here, while on the other side, it's going to get to go a little further. So take that into consideration when you're trying to figure out what you're going to be working with. Now, once I got the video up and was looking through it and following it, putting it together, they highly recommended of cutting 2.5 to 3 inch wide pieces of plywood to place under the rails. And the reason for that is to give you that lift to be able to get the router head flattening bit up and down under it and to be able to have enough room to cut your material. These bits are quite big and massive and stick down quite a bit. So when I had put the rails on the tabletop on its own, I couldn't get it over the top of this board. Next, the biggest thing that you need to set, or 2 things you need to set, are 1, making sure that the front, middle, and back of the rails are the same distance, because if they're not, this will not move smoothly. Secondly, you need to make sure that they are level with each other or in the same plane. What I did for this is I actually have a digital level, and I took my 4-foot level and set it on there, and I checked to make sure that along the whole thing it maintained the same angle, because then that let me know that one wasn't higher than the other. If they were, I could adjust it by either screwing the screw down more or by putting a shim under it and lifting it up. Once that was all set and it was locked in place, I placed the router sled onto it and it was ready to go. Now, I did have a little bit of stiction when trying to move this, and I think that was because it had been sitting so long that a lot of the oil and grease on these had, we'll just say, dried off or rubbed off on other things. So I just took some of this 3-in-1 oil, which I don't have anywhere near me right now, and I just dolloped it on a little bit here and ran it back and forth, and now, as you can see, nice and smooth. When going into actually getting your first piece cut or set up, one of the things you're going to want to do is checking to see if it's twisted or bowed. And if it is, and you have this wobble, like you have right here on this, you're going to want to take a shim and place it under it so that it holds it up and doesn't rock. I would also highly suggest figuring out some way for you to be able to secure this piece so it doesn't shift on you while you move. For me, luckily the shim trick has been actually holding it pretty well in place, and I haven't had to do much other tricks. I have seen out there taking a hot glue gun and just running a small bead of hot glue along the sides so it holds it in place. Other people use rugs, but then again, a rug might mess up the plane for you, or even one of those non-skid pads. At that point, I was ready to cut and get going. Now I'm going to go behind me and pull out the first piece I did. And it came out really well. You can see that the poplar here has returned to its normal color. And the first thing I wanted to check after it was done and down to thickness of 1.5 inches is determine, is it truly flat and are they in line with each other? And to my best ability with everything I've done here, it's pretty darn flat. When I measured it from edge to edge and in the middle, I only had about a 32nd of an inch difference in the middle, meaning that somewhere along in here, it's just out a little bit, and if I probably shimmed it out just a touch, it would make it so it's even a finer gap or eliminate that gap. The only way you could make this flatter and make it work better for your flattening needs would be by either putting it on a metal base that you know is truly flat, or spending the like $400, $500, $600 on a half-inch acrylic top that you could place on top of your table that you know isn't going to bow, bend, and flex due to humidity, temperature, and all the other things that change wood. But for my purposes, it's perfect. It works great. I can adjust it when I need to, and I can make any changes on the fly with the wood, and I really like it. Now, the thing you're all probably looking forward to, me actually cutting through this. Well, we're going to go ahead and get to that now, because the best way to show you this product is to actually use it. I have the Skill combo router that I got, the 14 amp, that I just did a review on in there and loaded up. I've been using it now for about, 2 days, and it works extremely well. I'm using a Speed Tools 2.5 inch carbide flattening bit. I think it's called a waste bit. They typically use it on CNC stuff, and I can tell you it has been cutting very smooth and very well. So let me go ahead and get you set up so you can get a better view of how this thing works, and we'll get to cutting. Stay tuned. So we are actually looking very flat. In fact, we're right at 1 9 16ths, just touching the line at 1 9/16, and again right at 1 9/16. So we're talking a 32nd, maybe a 64th difference here for what I'm using it for, and everything else. That's golden. Again, you could play with it a little more, put maybe just a shim knocked in a little bit here and there, but that's the Crafted Elements Router Sled. So far, I'm loving it. It's a cool machine. Even my wife was like, that looks really cool. Remember, with this type of thing, you need dust extraction to get all that fine dust. I should have thrown my mask on. It's sitting right over there, and I didn't, so please do that when you go to do it. But you can see with cleanup-wise, you got to have something to kind of keep it in. I forgot to put up the boards that I've made to put on the sides to help keep all the dust on the inside, but it's going to create a lot of dust. So just be ready to clean it up. That being said, hope you all like this video. Please like, subscribe, hit that notification button, share with your friends. Also, go ahead and drop comments of what you'd like to see me do next. What tools would you like me to review in my shop? What tools out there you think I would have fun with using? DIY builds. Those would be all awesome things that I would love to add content to the channel. I do have some new content coming up for you guys. So stay tuned, stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one.